All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Tipple's Virtual Wine of the Week tasting. We are down one Elizabeth, but that won't stop us. We're going to drink a delicious wine anyway. So Jeff Vaudreuil here from Tipple's Brews and Wines in Gainesville, Florida. This week, we will be drinking the De Martino Legado Cabernet Sauvignon. Let me share the screen. There you are. All right. Some nice accolades on this guy. So Legado means legacy. Very important wine for this winery. Nobody's throwing legacy on something just for fun, right? Wine Spectator 91. Jet Suckling, Jet Suckling 92. Number 66 in the Wine Spectator Top 100 just last year, and that was for this exact vintage. So not just representative, this is the exact wine chosen in the top 100 for last year. So food pairings on this guy: Chilean beef and corn casserole, picante de conejo, which is a rabbit dish, and eggplant shepherd's pie for the vegetarian side. So up here real quick. All right, I'm going to pour myself a glass. I'm assuming you guys have already gotten started. If not, now is the time. It's a Cabernet, and I just popped this open, so I'm giving it a good splash and a swirl to let it take a breath before I get into it. Very nice. Varietal content on this guy, it's all Cabernet Sauvignon. Alcohol content, 13.5. So here we have say, okay, 13.5, a lot of reds. We're looking at more like 14 plus. What does that tell us? It's a little cooler growth region. Chile is cooler. So you may get a few things in this Cabernet Sauvignon that are a little bit different than what we get out of our normal Californians that we're so used to. This guy's ready for young consumption, but it can age. So you're a little lower, but not low on the alcohol. But you're going to have a combination of tannin and acid on this guy because of the cooler growth that will let it age. So ready for immediate consumption, but you can lay it down for a few years. I'd say up to 10, but I wouldn't go beyond. I must get a nice earthiness on the nose here, combined with some really nice dark red fruits, black cherry, maybe black plum. And I like the spicy quality I'm getting that jumps right out as my first impressions. I'd say that earthy quality continues as a nice base. Maybe go with the spice continues. I'd say the fruit, maybe a little more red fruit, but still kind of nice and dark and rich. And so I said spice and the earthiness hangs out. So really liking this. What I'm not saying, and this will go back to the barrel use, they do not use young barrels with this. These are all older barrels. They're going to have less immediate, strong effect on the wine. So I have not said vanilla, right? That's not one of my notes. I've not said, oh, a big vanilla, toasty vanilla flavor, because the barrels are older. Younger barrels would give you much more vanilla coming out in here. Nice and dry, even though we're dealing with some very dark fruit here. It's a very nice dry wine. And I'd say another indication of the cooler growth area, rather than a really big heavy body on this guy, it's probably more medium plus on the body. It's the weight on your palate and the viscosity level. I'd say medium plus, a little lighter than what we have with a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon. And then let's see here. What do we have? Spiced cherry. Yes, I like that call from Chris. And Rachel says, I like that it's fruit and tannin, but not astringent to me. Okay, I like it. That's a good call. So it is a little more gentle, right, on the tannins. It's not as aggressive. It's an easier wine though I think has an elegance to it to sip without food, because you get those really aggressive tannins. You really need that food unless you're just really into that feeling. But I like the astringency call, because that is the truth. If you're not balancing one of those really tannic wines with some food, the truth is it actually is becoming astringent. A lot of people mistakenly attribute big, huge tannins that are out of balance to quality, and that isn't the case. You can have really big tannins in a well-designed wine. There's nothing wrong with big tannins, and I love them, but it doesn't automatically mean higher quality. So I like the call on that a lot, Rachel. Graphite volcanic soils. Linda and Paul, was it Linda? I like it. Yes. I like it. Yeah. So when that kind of earthiness where I was going in there, I like the more specificity in there, that graphite quality. Graphite is one of the standard qualities to expect in a Cabernet Sauvignon when it is expressing terroir. The better grown versions will express terroir. They won't just be fruit, and graphite is what comes through. So nice call. I like the specificity on that rather than sticking just with my general earthy note. And thank you for that. And thank you for that. All right. My wine's opening up. It's becoming even nicer as I speak. So let's see here. We talked about the barrels, talked about the cooler growth and some of what you can expect. I think you guys have actually cued in on that. I love that. So without further ado, why don't we jump back over then? And any other thoughts before I head over and talk about the label? Everybody looking pretty content. All right, so the wine label review, right? So what would I think if I was just walking around a wine store with no help? Clearly I wouldn't be at Tipple's. So we get in here, De Martino, okay, you got the winery right there, great. Legado doesn't tell me anything one way or the other than it's a named wine. So unless you were to know more, like I just told you guys, they named it for themselves as their legacy wine from the vineyard. Sure, when you know that, that means a lot more, right? But if you don't know, then it's not helping out a lot. Reserva in Chile does not have a specific meaning. So it does not mean aged a certain amount or anything like that. It is just simply something that they can utilize, much like they do in California. It can designate something they held back and aged longer. It could mean that it was the better vineyards, which it does in this case. It can mean it was the better barrels. So there's nothing specific within Chile that will tell me what Reserva means to them. But nice to see. The vintage, easy to see. Cabernet Sauvignon, you know what you're getting into, which is nice. Maipo Valley, so you're within Chile. It says wine of Chile under that. So Chilean, Maipo Valley. At least you're seeing kind of a specific, more local area, not just Chile in general. That's going to me, if I know nothing else, at least tick up a notch. On the back, it goes into a really nice write-up about the family when they began the vineyard in the 30s. Fourth generation, still family owned. I'm loving that, right? Not required for a good wine, but it always makes me feel better because if they're stating it specifically that it's still family owned and they're calling it their legacy, I'm feeling the connection between the two should be something that they're very proud of. And you go around here, besides that, it doesn't give you a lot, it gives you the alcohol by volume and that kind of a thing, but you're getting most of it on the front. So I've got a couple of points that are going to make me more interested in this wine. And I would go for it. Say, all right, that's a Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm going to try Chilean tonight. Let's see what this guy got going on. But there's so much more to know. And once again, there's that whole aspect of it's so, I think, and look, I'm not tooting my own horn here. I just find it to be intrinsically incredibly helpful with wine when you can get the story, right? So when you have someone else that says, oh, it's a fourth generation winery, you can see that by yourself on the back. The Legado means legacy. This is what they consider to be their legacy cab. Whoa, that's an entirely different expectation, right? And then you say, oh, and it was number 66 in the top 100 last year. Once again, like the ratings, not necessarily something that needs to automatically mean that you'll love this wine, but it's a really nice thing to know. And we know it's from Maipo Valley, not just from Chile in general. So we're getting a sense of place and a family. So that makes me feel good. That's where I would go with this one. And it is our good friend, Cabernet Sauvignon, right? Everyone loves a cab. The world loves Cabernet Sauvignon. So, origin in southwestern France, in the Bordeaux region. Now let's look at the world, around the world, right? Here we are, Cabernet Sauvignon, the most popular single varietal in the world. Red, white, or sideways, it is the most popular grape for winemaking in the world. Merlot follows pretty darn close on that. The iron is that's a lot of iron, right? That is the grape used to create brandy. So there is iron wine. We have had one in the store. I will probably have the same one again. It's quite good, but it is a very unique wine, but generally it's produced in order to then be distilled into brandy. That's why there's so much iron. Anyway, so Cabernet, number one. Cabernet, where is Cabernet grown? So we look at this guy and we have France is number one, but here we are, number two, Chile. So Chile grows even more Cabernet Sauvignon than the United States. And really good reason to get into Chilean Cabernet Sauvignon if you are a fan of the grape, and most people are. So that makes it really, to me, like an easy win. We're like, okay, clearly we should talk about Chilean Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, actually, the region we're drinking from tonight is particularly well suited to Cab, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's see here. So the Cabernet Sauvignon grape was a crossbreed between Cabernet Franc grape and Sauvignon Blanc grape. So interestingly, we have an intense red grape. The parentage is a red and a white grape, and the result was an even more intense red grape than the Cabernet Franc grape. So kind of funny the way genetics can work that way. Common flavors: black cherry, black currant, so cedar, baking spices, and graphite. We have it in there. Dryness, it can go like, there can be some really ripe versions, so they don't have this as bone dry on there because of looking at the worldwide options. This guy is dry, full bodied. Yes, this one is interesting. So it's going to be, like, to me, one click left on the dryness level. It's going to be also one or two clicks left. It's going to be more like medium plus on the full bodied. And medium tan and medium high tannins, I'd give this guy medium high, but many are high tannin. So, and all right, Paul, I see you've got your hand up, or Linda.
Sure. So with Cab Sav, so you were talking about how the parent grapes are Cab Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, right? So you, I guess, and maybe I'm trying to decide how I want to phrase my question, whether I want to make it specific to this bottle of wine or on the larger scope. But do most winemakers, so when they graft those together to make a Cab Sav, or does it come from like the same region? Do they take the parent vines from somewhere else? In this case, in this wine, would they both come from Chile? Because I do like white wines, on occasion. And I remember Sauvignon Blanc being, or I feel like I've seen a lot of Sauvignon Blancs from Chile, so
Mhm.
I'm just curious if where the, I guess the parent vines would come from. Is that like a dumb question for this?
No, no, it's not, and it varies. So it's a good question. Um, they they're going to get there, so they're going to start it from cutting. So the original crossbreed, which is kind of two separate things, right? So the original cross between Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, that was a cross pollination creation rather than taking cuttings, right? So that one was done genetically, and it has to be done that way in order to create the genetic exchange. So now, if you're going to take cuttings in order to propagate the Cabernet Sauvignon grape and cross the ocean, you're literally taking cuttings off the plant and then getting them growing and then grafting them. And this day and age, you have to graft them um, to a rootstock that can handle phylloxera, the infection that ran around the world, and go from there. So you're going to take a cutting from the fully done Cabernet Sauvignon vine in order to propagate it and bring it over to Chile. Now, where did they get it? They probably got it from France, but you could get it from all over the world at this point, depending on which exact grapevines impressed you. There are people that get all the way into different clones and follow the clone to find their favorite. And so it depends. I'm not sure where they got this particular clone from, but yeah, that's how they would get it.
Yeah.
Follow?
Yeah, so I guess my follow-up question is, how does that work? And how do you take, I'm trying to imagine the logistics. So how does that work where you take, I feel like that's, again, I'm sorry, but how do you take a clipping from Europe and transport it and care for it in a way that it's going to take root somewhere else? I mean, is it multiple clippings? Is it,
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine like what that would be like. And do
Well,
they
I tell you,
have
there've been a lot of
bodyguards for clippings? I mean, I don't
yeah,
know, but it
yeah.
feels like an undertaking.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. And the thing is, so they're going to take that clipping, right? And they're going to just like you would do with a lot of plants, you clip off a piece, you put it in some water, you get some roots growing down into the water. So now you've got a clipping that's ready to move on. Yes, you would do multiple clippings. Now, and I talked about then grafting, you get that clipping to get some growth on it, right? To get some robustness. And then you're going to take it, you're going to graft it onto some rootstock from the United States, usually, in order to be immune to the infection of phylloxera. Now, I do say that because that is generally the process. We are dealing with Chile. Chile is one of the only areas in the world where the phylloxera infestation never happened. So, quick running down on phylloxera. I know we've done specifics of it before, so I won't get too deep into it tonight. But phylloxera, they call it an infection a lot of times, but it's really an infestation because it's a root aphid. So these little tiny bugs that get down in the soil, and they literally are little vampires that suck the vine dry and kill it at the root. They came from the United States, and they ran around the world and almost destroyed all of the world's wine production once we began trade with the colonies in the United States. And really a little even later, because it was the 1800s before it became really bad. But that was the start of it. The infestation took hold over, especially over in Europe. But the United States also fixed the problem by creating grafting, where they are able to take the stock and stick it onto the rootstock of a grapevine from the southeastern United States originally. And those grapes, the only way they could live is they are immune to phylloxera. So that when I talk about phylloxera and grafting, that's kind of the 2-minute version of that entire saga. So, yeah.
So allow me to be Elizabeth for a moment. Phylloxera still exists. What we did was create vines that are immune to being susceptible to it.
Yes, that is correct. Which is why if you are in the wine industry, let's say if you are an American and from California, and you are a winemaker and you're visiting Chile and they see that on your passport, I've heard they will not let you bring your shoes into the country. Because they do not, they're worried that they were in your vineyards and then they're bringing them in. So, or at the very least, it goes through a thorough inspection, and you will go through a thorough inspection, because to this day, they have kept phylloxera out of Chile. So it's very remote. Phylloxera did infect Argentina right on the other side of the Andes, but the Andes are so tall that they actually block the ability for the phylloxera to hop over and get onto the other side to infect the Chilean vines. So that is actually one of the really fun things about Chile, is they don't have grafted vines, and they're one of the only areas in the world that has that. Other areas are just little pockets of areas that were able to avoid phylloxera, because phylloxera can't handle soils that are too dry. So there are some plateaus in Spain, some areas in Greece where the phylloxera just can't even live in that soil, but there are not many. It ran around the world. It was thorough.
Jeff, if I can add a little bit about the hardiness of plants. I do camellias instead of grapevines, but the Australians are big camellia growers. And many times the people from California or here will request some, what they call scions, small pieces of camellias that you're going to graft onto something. And they pop them into an envelope and put a stamp on it and drop it in the mailbox. It takes about a week to get here, and they put it in the fridge for a few days, and then they graft it. So it can be pretty tough stuff. I don't know how well the grapes would do that.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they're similar. It's amazing how robust plant life can be.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just snip it, send it, give it a little chill and a little water, and it'll bloom out on some roots, and you're good to go. It's amazing. If only we could grow grapevines effectively in the state of Florida, right? We'll put them in Jerry's yard. We'd all be drinking like kings.
That's right. Don't have to leave. Just turn over and go to sleep.
Perfect. All right, let's jump back over here. All right, so Cab Franc, the Mac Daddy, right? So Cab Franc, Sauvignon Blanc into Cabernet Sauvignon. Cabernet Franc was the genus of many popular varietals. Cabernet Franc was also one of the parent grapes for Carmenere, which is the national grape of Chile, right? So an interesting kind of fun fact that Cabernet Sauvignon, it grows really well in Chile, and they are the second largest grower of Cabernet Sauvignon, but Carmenere is their national grape. So, and Cabernet Franc was also involved in Merlot. So Merlot, Carmenere, Cabernet Sauvignon, all related. It's good old daddy Cabernet Franc. So when I say southwestern France, this is the area, the origin of the crossbreed to create Cabernet Sauvignon. And let's see here. All right, so Cabernet Sauvignon tends to be a very robust, thicker skinned grape. So a lot of the intensity is here on the skin in the peripheral zone. They have less intensity in the acid area. So Sauvignon Blanc, right, as the white grape, is going to have a lot more intensity in the acid area. So it didn't really take as much from the white grape side on there. But with a little cooler growth, we've got some nice tart freshness on this grape. It doesn't mean there cannot be acid within a Cabernet Sauvignon wine. So where in the world are we tonight? Hold on over here. The Maipo Valley in Chile. So all the way down here in the lower half of the southern latitudes. So it's going to be a little below the midway mark. We're going to be down here in Chile. It definitely gets to where it's a lot cooler between the maritime influence, the alpine influence, and just where it is in the world. So, but it all comes together for them with the intense sun. So here we are in the different growing regions, and the Maipo Valley is right here, just a little north of Santiago in Chile. So the Maipo Valley is one of Chile's most important, well, I say north, and it kind of wraps around it, to be honest. That's the better description. One of Chile's most important wine growing regions. It's called the Bordeaux of Chile, which is another good reason to say, oh, well, that makes sense why they're growing Cabernet Sauvignon there. And Cabernet Sauvignon is what they're best known for in this region, rather than the national grape of Carmenere. It is right over west of Mendoza, is right over here. So you can see it down here. So you've got, you're on this side of the Andes Mountains. On the other side, you've got Mendoza, the incredible growing area for Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon as well. We are talking about wine growing began in the 1500s, but it really took off in the 1800s in this area. 1,300 to 2,500 feet above sea level. You have a ton of elevation, and you've also got a maritime influence to keep it cool, even though it does have a lot of sun intensity. So you got a warm, dry days, quickly cooling nights. That leaves the grapes to ripen a little slower, get more character over time, and you don't get a lot of random rain showers in there to dilute the juice. And it lets them stay on the vine longer and become better grapes for winemaking. So let's see here. This we're talking about soil and granite, rock and pebbles, volcanic and clay and sand. Definitely kind of all of the above on this. High minerality, high drainage, not a lot of, which is the same story, right? Not a lot of organic material in there. Very much, actually very similar to Napa Valley in a lot of ways. Though at this point, they're kind of getting the advantage because Napa Valley keeps getting warmer and warmer, and they're I think holding their own a little better down there. All right. So to here, Santiago, just a little zooming in a little bit more. Here's the Maipo running around there. You can see the foothills. They give a little topography there. Yep. All right, let's take a look. So we've got the Maipo Valley. Well, there's the valley floor going right into those foothills. I'm going to have a sip of wine to that. And you can see, I would say that makes sense to me that there's going to be some chill coming off those mountaintops right there. I mean, we're not even talking about full winter here. This looks like it's probably post-harvest, but the grapes have not really, the leaves on there have not turned red and orange like they're going to fall off anytime soon. So yeah, that Andean cool breeze that's going to come down, you can see where the origin is in there. That's going to have a significant effect. So De Martino Winery, Linda and Brenda were there, and there may be some specific questions that hopefully you guys will throw out there for them as well. I grabbed all the pictures I could from them. It was not easy to get the ones from Facebook, but Linda's came through well. So Brenda, thank you for sharing as well. I don't think I got any of those down in time, but it's okay. We've got all these guys. So these are from, our own group right there, other than the next one. So family owned and created in 1934. They're on the 4th generation. Sebastian and Marco De Martino. There they are right there. Their fathers are still, the 3rd generation is still in place with ownership, but these guys are the ones really that seem to be frontline from the best of my knowledge. It wasn't a ton of info to help me out on their website, but I found secondary websites that seem to indicate that Sebastian and Marco were the ones with the hands-on at this point. So fourth generation, I know we all love family-owned wineries. I would love to know in anything I didn't learn that you remember, feel free to share and jump in, Linda and Brenda. So got a chat. Let's see. It would be a great album cover. Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's go in here to inside. All sustainable farming practices. And De Martino was the first winery to export a Carmenere out of Chile for the world to enjoy, and that was in 1996. It isn't always interesting to me to find out how, in my mind, recently they began exporting to the world. And before that, it was pretty much just consumption within their own country. And they were named one of the top 100 wineries. So we have this wine that was a top 100 wine in 2021. They were named one of the top 100 wineries in 2018, not that long ago, from Wine and Spirits magazine. They agreed that it would be a great album cover. That's great. So this looks like, you know, really nice. I love the wood up there. Lovely. Here's some amphora. How about that? So some nice clay pot fermentation. Cooperage over here. So some of those older barrels that we're enjoying with our wine tonight. And this looked like it says Syrah. So obviously they grow some of that as well. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's in a red blend as far as what I can purchase, but there, look at the soil right there. You can see like the color, almost an ashy color, a little bit of pebbles and sand, and it does not look like it is full of organic material because we know it's not. All right, let me stop the share real quick. So that, I said stop the share, thank you. All right, so that is the spiel before we get on to anything else. So what are you guys thinking?
So I didn't think this had a lot on the nose going on. I do think it's opened up really well. I mean, we opened up ours as always around 7:30, so about 30 minutes before it starts. But I really do think it needed a little bit more time from that to unwind. I really thought it's come out a lot more in the last 20 or 30 minutes. I also think, oddly enough, I didn't love this with food. We did like skirt steak tacos, and I was like, this is gonna be awesome. And I actually kind of thought the tacos like overwhelmed the wine, but going back to this after food, I've been like, oh, this is really nice. Like, I think a lot of those flavors that other people have been mentioning have really popped, especially the blueberries and these dark fruits that I thought got completely overwhelmed by our food. So I think this is settled in really nicely, even though it maybe didn't like, hell, it may be a little bit of a rocky start, but I think it's settled in really, really nicely.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I will say now that I've, because I've been talking for a hot minute here, and I returned to it, it reminds me of more Bordeaux than when it began, right? When it began, it was almost like this interesting earthy new world thing, almost similar to some Argentinians, but it's a lot more Bordeaux-like right now with this nice balance across the board where you have, fruit, spice, tannin, acidity, all kind of hanging at a nice balance in the same level. So I do like that a lot. And I do agree, this is definitely one, and I know I mentioned it before, but it's definitely a good one for, you can drink it with or without food. I like the idea, I like the whole point too of this is that it is not it's kind of a very reasonably priced wine for the quality and the balance that you're going to get out of it. So I do like that as well. I think for something that's always sub $30, it's quite a nice cab. So Linda and Brenda, you guys been awfully quiet for people that have had, you know, eyes on the prize. You've been there, you've touched it.
You just asked us a question.
There it is.
Oh, there we go. So we had to get, we were having technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, you know, last week when you revealed it, both of us were like, that seems really familiar, but the label doesn't look right. And, you know, so then we started going back through our pictures and we're like, yeah, we were there. And, you know, some of the things that stood out on the entire trip that when we went to Chile, the guy who coordinated it really went out of his way to make sure we didn't try things that we could get in the United States. So this was not something we tried, but everything we had was fabulous. And you know, the really interesting thing about this winery, and you showed the picture, was that they do all the fermenting in the clay pots, and the majority, and then just, you know, for the ones that they want a little bit of oak on, then they throw it in that. But the majority of the aging was done in those clay pots, which was really, really interesting. And they showed us the inside of the clay pots. So they use specific pots for different wines because they develop the sediment inside there that actually embeds itself in the pots that adds to the flavoring as well, which was really, really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I'm going to tell you, I like seeing that because they didn't describe it anywhere in the literature that I was able to look at about using the clay pots. But then your picture showed it, and it shows up on the nose. Like Chris was talking about, maybe a little bit of a reticent nose that doesn't jump right up out of the glass. But what I do get is a clay iron quality. In addition, it's like, okay, there's some nice, you know, maybe black cherries, but I get like a nice mineral now that it's really opened up. In the beginning, I was like, earthiness, right? It's kind of a general rich earthy, but honestly, I think it tightens up to something that's a little bit more like red clay.
And what was really interesting about the pots as well, they're 5,000 gallon pots, if I remember correctly. I did actually look at my notes because I took notes. There were 5,000 gallon pots, and when they put the wine in it, then they put the tops on it, and then they seal it with additional clay, and then they have to take the lids off when they're ready to take it out of the clay barrel, so they're completely sealed.
It's interesting that they don't have any way to release the CO2 as they ferment.
I believe that the lids had like a valve type thing on it,
Oh, okay.
but
That's interesting. I was about to speculate, maybe they did an initial main ferment in steel and then moved it to clay to age. No, it's right there from the beginning.
no,
So crush, drain.
Yep, went straight from the crushing into the clay pots and then into barrels for the ones that they wanted to get some oak to.
Nice. So herbs, I like the call from Linda. Aged well with a burger, absolutely. Because like I say, this guy, no wine, in my opinion, should be, you don't need to ever think, oh, I need to elevate my food to the wine. It's like, you know what, drink the wine, eat what you want with while you enjoy your wine. But this guy is really kind of nice and versatile in that way, and that it's got a nice dry Bordeaux styling that'll go with, you know, almost anything you want to pair with it. You can get really fancy, or you can go with a burger. And this would be a great pairing with that. So, all right. Anything else? All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Linda. I really appreciate that. Let's jump back over here. And so, like I said, this guy's label, it's got the ratings of 90 plus points. Year on year, that is the most recent one that got the top 100 as well. So top 100, 90 plus points. I'm going to guess that they were looking at this as a combination of price point and quality, and also quality for the region. So one of the things that can happen with Chilean wines is traditionally they've had a lot of pyrazine. Pyrazine is that quality that makes it taste like green bell pepper, which I do not get with this wine, which I appreciate very much. They've really been working on their techniques. When you get that bell pepper quality, it's indicative of an underripe grape. And I'm noticing, even just in the 7 years that I've been heavily involved in this industry, a tremendous reduction in the pyrazines coming out of Chilean wines, which I love. I love that they're really working on the grape growing side of it. And so many winemakers that we have on this wine of the week that we drink talk about that, great wine starts in the vineyard again and again. It's not about manipulating what you have, it's about growing it correctly the first time. And I think we're getting more and more of that here. So anyway, so what are you guys thinking? Do you find this guy to be an outstanding wine of superior character and style? Do you find it to be a very good wine, a wine of special qualities? Do you think you were blown away? Is it a classic? Or is it, hey, that's a good wine, 80 to 84? Keeping in mind also that, the industry skews toward the 90, right, wrong, or sideways, it's what they do. So something below an 86 is considered basically a failure in the industry. It shouldn't be by these guidelines, but that is what they're considered. So anyway, just take that for what it is. And for fun, let's see what you guys are thinking. I think I'll jump over here. So let's see here. So we have some people, let's see here. Rachel and David. David says better with food, but very drinkable without food. Totally agree. Dave, do you have something else you wanted to say? Your hand is up.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the pyrazines, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I lost that thought. I was trying to score it and lost that thought. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. You're killing me because your hand that you raise matches your wall so close that it's hard to see. I'm sorry if I ignored it. All right. So Robin was saying, or Robin or Chris, I think it's Robin. Maybe Chris. I've had a few Carmenères that had terrible amount of green. Oh, it's C at the end. I see. It's a Chris. So a terrible amount of green pepper. Glad this avoids it. I totally agree. That's one of my things with Chilean wines is I love Carmenère. Carmenère is a delicious grape grown to full maturation, right? When you pick that thing early, you get that bell pepper monstrosity that I'm not a fan of. Yeah, I would. Yeah, it's not my game. And I think for a little while, it was almost like the kind of like the manipulation, I don't know, the marketing speak out of Chile seemed to be, oh no, this is our style, we're good with this. And I was like, nah, you kind of need to just fix what you're doing. Anyway, and they have. I'm seeing Chilean Carmenère, and Carmenère, it wasn't immune, it wasn't the only one. Chilean Sauvignon Blanc, Chilean Cabernet Sauvignon, it all had these intense bell pepper qualities. And they seem to be falling by the wayside left and right, and they're getting that full maturation and really changing the way they're growing grapes down there. I hope they don't ever, if anyone were to watch me from down there and think I'm being condescending, I'm not. I'm just really happy to see the wine getting, in my opinion, a lot better out of Chile. And a great bargain to boot. So, all right. Hey, Dave, your hand is still up. Was that is it just not down or did you remember?
Sorry, I just sent it to the chat. Is that green pepper flavor more due to just not letting the grapes ripen completely, or is there more to it than that?
There can be a little bit more to it than that, but it's mostly not letting them ripen completely.
Just not
Chile
having
is,
patience.
yeah, Chile is really cool. It's a great opportunity for them to have a long hang time on these grapes, but it's easy to have it not ripen completely. And it's not the only place I've ever had the pyrazines. I mean, I've had some inexpensive Cabernet Sauvignon from California come across my desk for me to taste. And it's like, there's pyrazines. This is not properly grown. done. So they're not the only ones that do it. It is intrinsic to grape growing. I've had some Sauvignon Blancs that can do it, that can get pyrazine as well, because it just wasn't properly matured on the vine. So from Chris and Robin, we have an 87 and an 89. So they're saying, hey, that's a very good wine. It's a very good wine. There you go. We're talking about, sub 30 cab, medium bodied, little Bordeaux styling. I would say this to me would be the equivalent of a Cru Bourgeois styled Bordeaux. And we've had a couple of those at the same price point. I think it jumps in there. It's something that I'm very happy to drink. It makes, it's anyway, so we'll go with that. I don't want to go too much into what I'm thinking. So Lyndon Paul, 91. So they're like, hey, it's a damn nice wine. And I happen to agree. I don't want to be on both sides of this. I think this is an easy 90 pointer, right? Because I like the fact that it reminds me of Bordeaux. When you put in the Cabernet Sauvignon, the balance, the location, and the price point, I think you're up at that 90, 91 pointer. So, because, I've talked about this where I'm like, point up, point down, point up, point down, right? So obviously I love a big cab that just attacks my palate and gives me too many tannins. I'm one of those guys that can be wowed by that as well. But I can also be wowed when something balances beautifully across the board and it makes me happy. So 90, all of us. So that is 1, 2, there's 4 90s from the wine crew of John, Laura, Linda, and Brenda. 89 points, Rachel, the Schneiders, a couple of 89s right there on that. Consuelo, 89. Mason Cups, I go 90. I think it's really nice and balanced, not too dry and not too heavy on me on the tannins. I agree. I guess that's kind of what I just said too. So it looks like Justin and I are on the same page. 90 from Harriet and Jerry, good with food, good with lamb chop. Lamb chops would be great. I agree, like lamb and some of those things where you're not quite as big a red, meat, almost even better. Venison, that kind of a thing. Maybe ostrich, it could even go there, even though that, it's that red meat on the fowl side. Can you call a fowl if it's a red meat? I don't know. Bird, anyway. Not sure which way. Like, I know there can be some meat designations that are, it's a bird, but it's red meated. I don't know. Maybe goose. I'm going to find out at some point. I'm determined to eat a goose this year. Excellent. Well, anyway, nice ratings across the board. All of us hitting up and down on the 90-point mark. So we're right about where the experts decided it would be as well. I'm guessing the selection for a top 100 had a lot to do with that Bordeaux, like exactly what I was talking about, that Bordeaux styling, the Bordeaux balance, and the price point, and the combination of it being such a good wine from this very specific region within Chile is it's nice. I think they put a little bit of and I get it. They've got this responsibility and this opportunity when they're choosing top 100 wines to draw attention to areas that deserve it. And I think that's part of what they do with that. And when they say, hey, we want this guy in here because people can fairly easily just go grab this bottle, learn about Chilean cab, and be pleased by it. And it's worthwhile. That's my guess as to why they would do it. Oh, we got some more. Let's see here. It's a question. This flavor do more than being patient. There we go. And it told me I had 5 more. That must have been 5 lines. Okay, cool. All right. Let's jump over to, well, I'm going to tell you something. Before I do, the next thing I'm going to be doing is thanking my sources and sharing the next wine of the week. So before I do that, any last thoughts? Because I'm going to ask you again after I do the thanking of the sources, because I'm going to ask you one more time before I sign off on the recording. So if there's not, I'm still going to bug you one more time. It's how I do. All right. So thank Thank you to Wine Folly, always amazing source, 750.com, Wikipedia. That's right, DiMartino.cl. That's the winery. So DiMartino, thank you. Wine Searcher, Linda and Brenda, thank you. Wine Mag, which is Wine Enthusiast, and the Maipo Valley Winery Tours, wine tours. So great picks and all around. Thank you, everybody. So next week's wine, we're going to have some fun next week. I am looking to see, this wine may be polarizing. Let me say that, all right? We're going to South Africa, the Barista Pinotage, and their quote, a decidedly modern take on Pinotage. Food pairings, pork mole, bacon wrapped portobello mushrooms, grilled eggplant with goat cheese. Something savory, fun, mole would be incredible. It is a bold interpretation of working with Pinotage, and at a very reasonable price to kind of jump in and try something different. All right, what's up, Paul?
Do you already have it in the store? Is this a promise?
I already have it in the store. That's right, sitting right there, ready to go. I got it a week ahead of time. All right, I'm sounding really capable right now. So I'm actually really looking forward to the discussion next week on this grape, on this wine. No, but the grape, the wine. Pinotage is such an interesting grape. And this is a very, very, it's called Barista for a reason. You can wrap that up and think about it because we're going to talk about it extensively next week. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, I hope you'll join me next week. We'll talk about that. And let's have a toast and send off this delightful Chilean Cabernet Sauvignon to you guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.